Ushering in the second coming. Are the end times near? Are we in the last days? There are enough podcasts out there that perform an exhaustive review of end times prophecies, offer insights on whether or not the second coming prophecies have already been fulfilled, if we're in the last days, and more. My goal is not to undergo an exhaustive review of every single second coming or end times prophecy. My goal is to zoom out, look at the bigger picture, point out a few strong general patterns, and describe why I believe that Christ's kingdom has recently been set up on the earth in preparation for his second coming. I'll also show how a few key prophecies have been or are being fulfilled. According to a Pew Research Center survey, 47% of Christians in the United States believe we are living in the end times. That's 63% of evangelical Protestants, 31% of mainline Protestants, 27% of Roman Catholics, and I would think that all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believe we are in the last days, since it's part of our name and identity. And our current prophet and leader, Russell M. Nelson, has stated unequivocally that we are in the last days. If we want to consider from a logical standpoint whether or not we're in the last days, we should look for patterns and for things that are different today than ever before in history. In my humble opinion, it's a bit difficult to point to wars, plagues, and natural disasters as evidence for the last days. I'm not saying there isn't evidence. I know there are strong arguments that those tragedies have increased, but those things have always existed, and I know there are those out there who downplay the increases we've seen in those areas. One obvious area of change that I think is beyond argument is the exponential growth of the world's knowledge and technology. To me, this is unquestionable. It's a strong and obvious difference in our day compared to prior days. People died in wars yesterday and today. People died from plagues yesterday and today. Today, someone in Ghana, Africa, could sit down and watch this video recorded by a nobody in the US. That's unique to history. We've never seen anything like it before in history. So let's dive into how technology has changed in recent years and how that could be an indication that we're in the last days and that God is working miracles around us. According to most historical accounts, the significant shift towards exponential technological growth is generally considered to have started around the mid-20th century, particularly with the development of the transistor in the late 1940s, marking the beginning of the information age and leading to rapid advancement in computing power and related technologies. So exponential technological growth. In his 1981 book, Critical Path, futurist and inventor R. Buckminster Fuller estimated that if we took all the knowledge that mankind had accumulated and transmitted by the year 1 AD as equal to 1 unit of information, so everything from the beginning of the world until the year 1 AD, consider that 1 unit of information. It probably took 1,500 years for the amount of knowledge to double. So it took until the 16th century for that 1 unit of information to double to 2 units of information. The next doubling of knowledge, from 2 to 4, took only 250 years, until about 1750 AD. By 1900, 150 years later, knowledge had doubled again to 8 units. In modern times, exponential knowledge progressions therefore change at an ever-increasing rate. It has been estimated that scientific knowledge doubles every 6 to 10 years. Medical knowledge doubled after 50 years in 1950, but it doubled after 3.5 years in 2010. Knowledge will double every 12 hours in the near future, per estimations. Artificial intelligence is now pushing this advancement. We are just getting started. Now, there have obviously been advancements of knowledge and technology throughout history. The Greek and Roman empires always come to mind. In Rome, we saw the inventions of aqueducts, roads, concrete buildings, architectural arches, bound books, battlefield surgical tools, central heating systems, the Julian calendar, and more. But again, we are now advancing at exponential rates. In 1790, the U.S. Constitution was, quote unquote, invented. We received the U.S. Constitution, the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, the first, in 1800, we received the first high-pressure steam engine. In 1823, the first public railway opened in England. In 1830, the first regularly scheduled steam-powered rail passenger service in the U.S. sprung up. In 1908, we got the Ford Model T. In 1920, the telephone became widely used in the U.S., 35% of households. And in 1926, the first scheduled airline passenger service began in the U.S. Notice I left 1820 blank. Something very important happened in 1820, and we will get to that. In 1936, electricity usage became commonplace in the U.S. In 1950, we had the widespread adoption of the television, the launch of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. In 1975, we got the laser printer, commercial barcodes, Intel 4004 microprocessor. In 1993, we saw the beginning of internet public use. In the year 2000, Facebook had 0 users. In 2007, they had 30 million users. In 2015, they had 1 billion users. And 10 years later, they have over 2 billion users. And in 2025, AI has become available to the masses. We see lots of people talking about AI these days. What I failed to include here also was that Elon Musk's Starlink began around the year 2019, and it allows people to access the internet from anywhere in the world. So what happened in 1820? Remember I told you I skipped what happened there. Let's fill in the blank. God the Father and the Son, Jesus Christ, appeared to the boy, Joseph Smith. I'll cover the significance of this in just a second. Now, what else happened in 1823? Not only did we see the first public railway opening in England, but the angel Moroni appeared to the boy Joseph Smith. Again, we'll cover that significance in a second. And in 1830, what else happened? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was organized, and the Book of Mormon was published. The restoration of Christ's kingdom. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder. This text signifies that in the last days God will perform an extraordinary and astonishing act that will be beyond human understanding. Imagine you're living in the year 1520, and you're tasked with explaining a satellite, light bulb, computer, cell phone, motorcycle, indoor plumbing, water heaters, or airplane to someone. These are technologies that are commonplace and we take for granted every single day. But to that audience in 1520, these things are marvelous. They're a wonder. They're a mystery. They are absolutely incredible. And these things have been instrumental in the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ and in the growth of Christ's kingdom on earth. Now, what is this kingdom I keep talking about? And let me go back and just say that I'm not suggesting that this technology itself is the marvelous work or wonder that's being spoken of here. But I will say that I see a pattern in that this technology came about at the same time that this kingdom came about. In 1820, God the Father and his Son Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph Smith. I'm basing this presentation on the assumption that the audience is somewhat familiar with this account from Joseph Smith of the first vision of God the Father and Jesus Christ, visitations from the angel Moroni, the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, and the establishment of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you're familiar with these, I encourage you to if you're not familiar with these, I encourage you to visit the link that I'm going to leave in the comments to learn more about it. However, here are some key takeaways from God's visitation with Joseph. He was told that the true church of Jesus Christ was not on the earth, and that Joseph was chosen to restore it. Joseph should not join any of the religious sects of the day, as they were all wrong. Joseph's sins were forgiven. Joseph should obey the commandments. The world was corrupt, and the second coming of Jesus Christ was approaching. In 1823, an angel named Moroni appeared to Joseph Smith and gave him instructions over a number of years. Here are some key points from this first visitation. God had sent the angel Moroni to instruct Joseph about restoring the gospel of Jesus Christ. Moroni told him about the Book of Mormon, which was written on gold plates and buried in a stone box. It contained the fullness of the everlasting gospel and an account of the ancient inhabitants of the Americas. Joseph would translate the plates with the power of God. Moroni also taught Joseph about the covenant God made with ancient Israel and the preparatory work for the second coming of the Messiah. Moroni also showed Joseph that God reveals line upon line and precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Joseph Smith stated, "The angel Moroni called me by name, and said unto me that he was a messenger sent from the presence of God to me, and that his name was Moroni, that God had a work for me to do, and that my name should be had for good and evil among all nations, kindreds, and tongues, or that it should be both good and evil spoken among all people." Moroni also directly quoted Isaiah 11:12 and 13, and stated this was about to be fulfilled. "And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim." So let's talk about the tribe of Judah. Remember, the angel Moroni mentioned the tribe of Judah during his visit with Joseph. Why would the angel Moroni, or Joseph Smith, talk so much about Israel, or specifically about the tribe of Judah? Why is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its members so interested in Judah? There's a lot that could be unpacked and discussed here, but put simply, they're God's ancient chosen people. Jesus Christ was from the tribe of Judah. Their history, revelations, prophecies, stories, and customs have molded Western religion and thought and gave rise to Christianity. They laid the groundwork in history for where we are now. Again, they're a chosen people. Obviously, their story is not over. Their history is still being written. Now let's talk a little bit more about what has been prophesied about their future. Remember, in 1823, Moroni reiterated Isaiah 11 and said, "This is about to be fulfilled. The dispersed of Judah will be gathered together. The adversaries of Judah will be cut off. Ephraim and Judah will start playing nice." Who is Ephraim? We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's look at this timeline. Around 30 AD, in Luke 21:24, we read this prophecy: "Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles," or non-Jews, "until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." So what has happened to Jerusalem since this prophecy around 30 AD? Jerusalem was passed around between the Romans, the Crusaders, the Mamluks — I'm going to butcher some of these names, by the way — and the Ottomans. Other groups that have ruled Jerusalem include the Persians, Arabs, Fatimids, Seljuk Turks, and Islamists. In 1823, the angel Moroni quoted Isaiah 11 and said these prophecies were about to be fulfilled, namely, the dispersed of Judah would be gathered from the four corners of the earth, the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off, Ephraim and Judah will get along. So what happens after 1823? In 1830, The Jewish population in Israel was 4,000, 1/5 of the population. In 1945, over 100 years later, 115 years later, we saw the end of World War II and the Holocaust. Speaking of being trodden down of the Gentiles, remember the Holocaust. Wow. In 1950, Britain, and I put here Ephraim, gains control of Israel. The State of Israel is created in 1948, and the Jewish population in 1950 was 630,000, 1/3 of the population. In 1975, the Jewish population was close to 3 million, and 85% of the total population. In 2025, the Jewish population is close to 7.7 million, and still over 3/4 of the full population. Now you tell me, does it look like Moroni's prophecy has been fulfilled? Have the dispersed of Judah been gathered? Have Judah's adversaries been cut off? Are Ephraim and Judah getting along, or are they still vexing or envying each other, as the prophecy mentions? I'd say they're getting along. Look at how the West has supported and continues to support Israel and defend Israel from her enemies. So let's quickly recap. We've looked at how the world began to rapidly change before and after the pivotal beginnings to the restoration of Christ's kingdom in 1820. Prior to 1820, we saw the establishment of the U.S. Constitution and the spark of liberty and freedom. We've seen the invention of trains, cars, airplanes, radio, television, internet, social media, and all of the tools that have brought in the information age. And this technology has no doubt aided in the spread of the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. In no other setting could this message have spread so quickly, and in no other setting could so many people have been given the opportunity to seek light and knowledge, or in stark contrast, darkness and deceit. We've also seen how one of the prophecies, specifically the prophecy regarding the tribe of Judah that was discussed by Moroni and Joseph Smith in 1823, has been fulfilled to perfection. Let's look at how others have played out so far. Paul wrote around 56 AD, "Blindness in part is happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in." President Joseph Fielding Smith explained that the times of the Gentiles commenced shortly after the death of our Redeemer. The Jews soon rejected the gospel, and it was then taken to the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles have continued from that time until now. The Lord said, "But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first." In that day the gospel was given first to the Jews and then taken to the Gentiles. In this dispensation it was taken first to the Gentiles, and afterwards it will go to the Jews. President Ezra Taft Benson explained, "The Lord has designated these days in which we live as the times of the Gentiles. The Gentile nations are the so-called Christian nations, North and South America, and the European nations from which many of us came. The phrase times of the Gentiles refers to that period of time extending from when the gospel was restored to the world, 1830, to when the gospel will again be preached to the Jews after the Gentiles have rejected it." It's helpful to note that Joseph Fielding Smith said that the times of the Gentiles began after the death of Christ, when the apostles took the gospel to the Gentiles, while President Benson said that the times of the Gentiles began in 1830 when the gospel of Jesus Christ was restored. I think they're both correct in that, yes, the gospel was preached in pure form by the apostles to the Gentiles, but that the gospel was quickly corrupted and there was a falling away, so the progression of the fulfillment of the times of the Gentiles back then was very short-lived. We're now in the time where the times of the Gentiles will actually be fulfilled because there will not be another falling away. However, the early apostles clearly set the stage for Christ's kingdom in the last days. This is how the Lord explained the times of the Gentiles. "And when the times of the Gentiles is come in, a light shall break forth among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be the fullness of my gospel. but they receive it not, for they perceive not the light, and they turn their hearts from me because of the precepts of men. And in that generation shall the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. We will know when the times of the Gentiles are approaching fulfillment by these signs. And in that day shall be heard of wars and rumors of wars, and the whole earth shall be in commotion, and men's hearts shall fail them, and they shall say that Christ delayeth his coming until the end of the earth. And the love of men shall wax cold, and iniquity shall abound. And again, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come, or the destruction of the wicked. To fulfill the times of the Gentiles and usher in the second coming of Christ, 1, the Jews will be gathered back to the land of Jerusalem. We've already discussed that. 2, it will be in a time of great social turmoil. We'll discuss that in a little bit. And 3, the Gentiles will, for the most part, reject the gospel. Number 3 is kind of up for debate as to whether that's already happened or what that will look like. I know many believe this was fulfilled when the early church members were kicked out of Missouri and left the United States to what is now Utah. I personally think the Gentile nations are still converting to the gospel. If you look at the current growth in South America and Africa, for example, I'm personally watching for the time when that growth starts to slow down. Now that we've laid the groundwork for what the times of the Gentiles actually is, I want to look at these prophecies that were stated or reiterated by the Lord through Joseph Smith in the 1830s. I'm sorry, I was not expecting to lose my voice, but here we are. I'll try to get through the rest of this without sounding too horrible. Then shall the fullness of the gospel of the Messiah come unto the Gentiles, and from the Gentiles unto the remnant of our seed. And at that day shall the remnant of our seed know that they are of the house of Israel. I must bring forth the fullness of my gospel from the Gentiles unto the house of Israel. So first the gospel will go to the Gentiles, then from the Gentiles to the remnant of Lehi's seed, and also from the Gentiles to the house of Israel. So the gospel will go from the Gentiles to, quote, the remnant of our seed, end of quote. In other words, the seed of Lehi, who is the first prophet mentioned in the Book of Mormon. So who are the remnants of this ancient American prophet, Lehi's seed? From the introduction page of the Book of Mormon. The book was written by many ancient prophets by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. Their words, written on gold plates, were quoted and abridged by a prophet historian named Mormon. The record gives an account of two great civilizations. One came from Jerusalem in 600 BC, and afterward separated into two nations, known as the Nephites and the Lamanites. After thousands of years, all were destroyed except the Lamanites, and they are among the ancestors of the American Indians. Note, the introduction page was not recorded anciently. It's an added text in modern days to add context and background for modern readers who are seeking to come to Christ through covenant. This underlined portion here, they are among the ancestors of the American Indians, is a controversial statement, and it's a hot point for critics or skeptics of the church. Although I don't want to get sidetracked from the key point of this commentary, since this is an issue that concerns some people, I think it's important to address it briefly. Critics point out that DNA testing and research has suggested that the American continent's early inhabitants were of Asian descent. I'm not a scientist, let alone an expert in this field, but my understanding is that some scientists who are sympathetic to the church's point of view have pointed to the limitations of DNA testing, particularly when trying to reach back for information as far as the Book of Mormon times, starting around 600 BC. One such issue that arises from trying to discover remnants of DNA from that far back is referred to by experts in the field as the founder effect. This would involve a small colony mixing with an existing and larger population. It's quite possible that Nephi's small band of Israelite people met and mixed in with a much larger existing population. This would make modern detection of Israelite DNA very difficult or impossible. There are other issues with DNA testing, such as genetic bottleneck, which would occur with the destruction of civilizations, or what experts call genetic drift. There are apparently examples of ancient populations of Iceland, Great Britain, and the Near East that we know existed but have left no genetic profile that can be detected in modern populations. Critics will point out that earlier versions of the introduction page of the Book of Mormon used the phrase principal ancestors instead of among the ancestors of the American Indians. The introduction page was written in modern times to provide context for religious readers who are seeking to learn about Jesus and his covenant with his followers. It has never been the mission or intent of the Church to claim exact knowledge of the historical or anthropological background of the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon is not a history book. It was written to provide guidance for our day. It was written to testify of Jesus Christ and his covenant. The Book of Mormon does not claim that a prophet left. The Book of Mormon does claim that a prophet left Jerusalem, estimated around 600 BC, with other families and was guided by God to the Americas. The Book of Mormon itself does not make any claims about modern DNA. The introduction was written separately in modern times and was added to provide context and to fill in blanks, and it made assumptions based on the current knowledge and current assumptions at the time. I don't think personally that this edit affects much, but it is relevant in that we are talking about a prophecy here about the gospel going to the remnants of this prophet Lehi. So that's what makes it relevant for the current discussion. So again, we're looking at the gospel going to the Gentiles and then to the remnant of Lehi's seed and to the house of Israel. So again, who are the remnants of Lehi's seed? Current sentiment is that the blood of Lehi could be among certain indigenous peoples of the Americas, including Central America, South America, as well as island nations such as Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, etc. This would mean that they would be considered the remnant of Lehi's seed. Do we know that all of them are a remnant of Lehi's seed? No, and I'm making no such claim. But since I do believe in the authenticity of the Book of Mormon, I assume that somewhere on earth there is a people who have within them a remnant of the blood of Lehi. And since the gospel is being preached in nearly every nation on earth, those people are being taught the restored gospel of Jesus Christ and learning about the covenant that their ancestors made with Jesus Christ when he appeared to them on this continent. So now the second point. Where is the house of Israel? The house of Israel is made up of 12 tribes. Benjamin gets lumped in with Judah, and we've discussed the tribe of Judah already. They've been trampled by the Gentiles, but have not lost their identity or history. But the lost 10 tribes of Israel did get lost, and they did lose their history. We do know that the Assyrians, led by King, I'm going to butcher this name, Shalmaneser V, conquered the kingdom of Israel and exiled the 10 tribes. Where did they end up? Whose population did they mix with? We don't know. Could I have within me the blood of Ephraim? Possibly. My ancestors are from Britain, and I've hypothesized that when Isaiah referred to Ephraim, that he was possibly referring to the UK and how they helped Judah return to Jerusalem. Do you have within you the blood of Simeon or Dan? There may be a remnant of the blood of each tribe somewhere in the world. We don't know for sure. But it's a very similar discussion. It's a very similar discussion to the one that we had about Lehi's seed just a moment ago. After they were scattered, they are now being gathered. The gospel is being preached in all the world to the remnants of Lehi's seed and also to the lost tribes of Israel. They're being gathered together again. And this theme is found throughout Scripture, particularly the Book of Mormon. In 1830, Joseph Smith stated, "It is only a little handful of priesthood you see here tonight, but this church will fill North and South America. It will fill the world." So how did this prophecy play out? And how did the prophecy play out that it would start with the Gentiles and then go to the remnant of Lehi's seed and the house of Israel? So first to the Gentiles. Let's look at this timeline here. So again, in 1820, God the Father and the Son Jesus Christ appeared to the boy Joseph Smith. In 1823, the angel Moroni appeared to Joseph Smith for the first time. In 1830, the Book of Mormon was published, the church was established, and there were 280 members of the church. You can see the growth of the church throughout the years. In 1908, 371,000 members. In 1920, 526,000. In 1926, 624,000. In 1936, 761,000. In 1950, there were over 1.1 million members. There were 224 stakes, or groups of congregations in the church. All were in US and Canada, except one colony of white settlers in Juarez, Mexico. The church went 125 years with only one stake outside of the US and Canada. And the one outside of US and Canada and Mexico was not really run by Mexicans. So the gospel really did first go to the Gentiles. Then to the remnant of our seed, or unto the house of Israel. So from 1955 to 1975, what happened? Let's look at this 20-year period. 1.4-ish million members in 1955, 224 total stakes. This is where we see the beginning of stakes of Zion spreading to overseas areas and to the house of Israel, and to many who could be considered the remnant of Lehi's seed. Here's the first stakes that begin in quote-unquote indigenous areas. New Zealand, 1958. Tonga, 1960. Mexico, 1961. Samoa, 1962. Argentina and Brazil, 1966. Guatemala, 1967. American Samoa, 1969. Peru, 1970. Chile and Tahiti, 1972. At the same time, stakes continued to grow in non-indigenous and Gentile areas. England and Australia in 1960. Switzerland and Germany in 1961. Scotland, 1962. Japan, 1970. Korea and Philippines, 1973. Sweden and Wales, 1975. We talked about the advancement of technology that aided in the growth of the gospel. But what about the perfect political setting for this growth to occur after the 1940s? After World War II, the US dollar standard and the rise in globalization and the security throughout the world allowed the gospel to go forth to all these nations. It's uncanny. In 1975, the church grew to almost 6 million members, roughly 560 stakes. 2% were from South and Central America. 0.2% were from Africa. In 1993, the church grew to almost 8.7 million members. In 2000, it almost reached 11.1 million members and roughly 2,800 stakes. And today, we have roughly 17.3 million members, roughly 3,350 stakes, and 31% of stakes are from South and Central America, 42% of total members, and 5% of stakes are from Africa. So the church grew from stakes in one area to stakes all over the world in a very short period of time, aided by technology, aided by social and political stability. The church does now, in fact, fill North and South America and the world. I want to talk about one more element that I think is noteworthy: social turmoil, or social disturbance, confusion, and uncertainty. Are we seeing this today? And in that day shall be heard of wars and rumors of wars, and the whole earth shall be in commotion, and men's hearts shall fail them. And they shall say that Christ delayeth his coming until the end of the earth, and the love of men shall wax cold, and iniquity shall abound. The prophet Spencer W. Kimball in 1980 said, "Many of the social restraints which in the past have helped to reinforce and to shore up the family are dissolving and disappearing. The time will come when only those who believe deeply and actively in the family will be able to preserve their families in the midst of the gathering evil around us." The Apostle Boyd K. Packer in 1994 stated, "The distance between the church and a world set on a course which we cannot follow will steadily increase. Across the world, those who now come by the tens of thousands will inevitably come as a flood to where the family is safe." In 1995, the First Presidency and Council of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints stated, "We warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or who fail to fulfill family responsibilities will one day stand accountable before God. Further, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets. We call upon responsible citizens and officers of government everywhere to promote those measures designed to maintain and strengthen the family as the fundamental unit of society." Here's a little timeline of facts that I was able to gather on the internet. I have not been able to personally vet any of this data, but it's interesting, and I'd like to open up the comments, and I'm sure there are people who are experts in this field. 1830 to 1920. What I've found is that less than 1% of couples in the U.S. ended in divorce. This is throughout the 1800s. 20% of women were involved in the U.S. workforce. 90% of the U.S. population was Christian. By 1950, less than 10% of children were living in single-parent families. I think I couldn't find this same stat for the 1800s, but in 1950 it was less than 10%. Less than 20% of couples ended in divorce. So we're already, from the 1800s to 1950, we're seeing 20% ending in divorce versus less than 1%, from what I could find. Then you've got 34% of women participating in the U.S. workforce, much higher. And I imagine that the World War I and World War II had something to do with that, particularly World War II. And still the same percentage of Christians in the U.S. population. By 1975, we are up to 17% single-parent families. We're up to 37 to 44% being divorced. We're up to 46% of women in the workforce. We're still 90% Christian. 1955, we're up to 20% single-parent family households, 43% divorced. By 2000, we're up to 22% single-parent family, 41% divorced, 60% of women in the workforce, 80% Christian U.S. population. By 2015, I couldn't find stats before this, and I don't know that this was worse than, previously, but these are alarming statistics. 1 in 4 girls sexually abused before age 18. 1 in 5 women will be raped at some point in their lives. 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted in college. 3.5% of U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ+. In 2025, 25% of children are living in single-parent families. One in 4. 41% of couples end in divorce. 7.6% of U.S. adults identify as LGBTQ. So the amount doubled in 10 years. 55% of women participate in the workforce. And 68% of the U.S. population considers themselves to be Christian. So I have my own opinions about social issues like divorce, dual income households, single parent households, gender dysphoria, etc., without even making a moral statement about any of these things. I think it's safe to point out and conclude that the social fabric of society is changing. There is turmoil, there's disruption, there's uncertainty, and there's confusion. There's fierce debate. There are more single-parent homes, less mothers in the home, less interaction between child and parent. Employment is held in a career outside of the home instead of in a trade that in the past would often carry from father to son, with all family members pitching in to support each other. The social fabric has unquestionably changed as the world has changed exponentially since the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Summary and conclusion. Now, I've taken all 4 timelines and put them together so that you can pause this video and view it. I'm not going to go over all of these, but you can see how they work together and how, again, we're trying to see the big picture here and see how the Lord really is engaged in a work. And he's pushing technology and knowledge throughout the earth. It's aided in the fulfillment of these prophecies, and we can see them if we open our eyes. This is just going further down the timeline so that they all can't fit in one slide. So this is again the summary of 1955 to 1975. And then we're here 1975 to 2025. And here's a summary, right? So as far as technology and knowledge goes, we've seen the birth of liberty and freedom. We've seen the dollar standard, globalism, security. We've seen exponential growth in knowledge and technology. We've seen the prophecy about Jerusalem and Judah being fulfilled. Jerusalem was trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. The dispersed of Judah were gathered. The adversaries of Judah were cut off. Ephraim and Judah support each other. The fullness of the gospel of the Messiah came to the Gentiles. The gospel went from the Gentiles to the remnant of Lehi's seed and to all the house of Israel. The church fills North and South America and the world. The church survived the persecutions in Nauvoo, in Missouri. It survived all the way to the Rocky Mountains, and it has flourished unbelievably. And we're seeing social upheaval. We're seeing social restraints, which have reinforced the family, dissolve and disappear. We're seeing the safety of the family at risk. And I think we're barely getting started on that front. The establishment of Christ's kingdom on earth has been nothing short of a miracle. Sometimes we get so caught up in the weeds that we forget to take a step back and see the whole picture. God is behind this work. It began with prophecy and a premise, and it has all come to pass. And the dominoes have fallen perfectly to ensure that it happens. As today's prophet, Russell M. Nelson, has stated, we are in the last half of the ninth inning. Eat your vitamin pills, get your rest. It's going to be exciting. End of quote. As the ancient prophet Alma recorded in the Book of Mormon, awake and arouse your faculties, even to an experiment upon my words, and exercise a particle of faith, even if you can no more than desire to believe. Let this desire work in you, even until you believe in a manner that you can give place for a portion of my words. I hope this presentation helps you believe, or gives you a desire to believe, to the point where you're willing to experiment on the Word of God. Let the desire work in you. Lean into it. Lean in a bit. Jesus Christ is in control. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is his kingdom on earth. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.